Real stories of werewolves, of Dogman from history, from your emails, illustrated and animated with the democratizing magic of machine learning AI. Welcome to Scary Stories.
Tonight on Scary Stories, we've got a full hour of scary Dogman and werewolf tales. And we're going to begin it with the historical Cannock Chase werewolf. Cannock Chase, werewolf portal. The dense, shadowy woods of Cannock Chase have long been shrouded in mystery, but in my opinion, one story stands out above the rest. It was a chilly autumn night in 2012 when two friends parked their car on the side of a quiet road, hoping to capture some nighttime wildlife on camera. As they sat in the darkness, their car's headlights illuminated the edge of the forest, revealing something truly terrifying. A hulking creature, nearly 8 feet tall, with the body of a man and the head of a wolf. The creature's eyes gleamed in the light as it locked onto the vehicle, its snarl echoing through the silent night. Suddenly it charged toward them, forcing the friends to flee in terror. This is the Cannock Chase werewolf, a creature of local legend that still haunts the dreams of those who dare to venture into the woods after dark. Cannock Chase, a sprawling forest in Staffordshire, England, is renowned for its haunting beauty and eerie atmosphere. The forest's dense canopy and winding trails create a sense of isolation, where sunlight barely penetrates the thick foliage. The ancient trees loom overhead, their gnarled branches forming shadowy patterns on the forest floor. The silence is often broken by the rustling of leaves or the distant call of a bird, adding to the sense of unease that pervades the area. Beyond its natural beauty, Cannock Chase is steeped in history. It has been a site of human activity for centuries. During World War I and II, it served as a military training ground and housed a prisoner of war camp, which left behind a legacy of wartime relics and ghostly tales. The forest is also unfortunately infamous for the Cannock Chase murders in the 1960s, when the remains of 3 young girls were found, casting a dark shadow over the entire area. Today, the forest attracts paranormal investigators and thrill seekers, drawn by its reputation for strange sightings and unexplained phenomena. And I'm not just talking about werewolves either. Local folklore speaks of numerous strange creatures lurking within its depths, including ghosts, mysterious big cats, and this seems to have been the place where the stories of the black-eyed children actually originated. However, among these tales, the most captivating to me personally is the legend of the Cannock Chase werewolf. Although some claim the local werewolf legend goes back into the deeper past, this has yet to be proven. We do, however, know that it became a thing in the 70s. The Cannock Chase werewolf story first gained significant attention in 1975, when a series of sightings began to emerge, sparking interest from both locals and paranormal investigators. These early reports described a creature unlike any seen before, part man, part wolf, and wholly terrifying. Interesting like the Midwestern American Dogman seen by a night watchman in the 1930s, the modern Cannock Chase Dogman legend begins in or near a cemetery. The first notable recorded 20th century sighting of the British werewolf was actually by a local paranormal group investigating strange occurrences near the German War Cemetery. That was an area already known for its eerie atmosphere and ghostly legends. Personally, I was surprised to learn that England already had paranormal research groups all that far back, but I don't suppose that should have surprised me at all. Members of the group reported seeing a large wolf-like creature that stood on its hind legs, towering over 7 feet tall. That should sound familiar to viewers of this channel. This beast had piercing eyes that seemed to glow in the darkness, adding to its menacing appearance. The creature reportedly snarled and growled before disappearing into the dense underbrush. Around the same time, a local scoutmaster had a similar encounter. While leading a group of scouts on an evening hike near the cemetery, he saw what he initially thought was a large dog. However, as the dog stood up on its hind legs, the scoutmaster realized it was much larger and more formidable than any dog. He described the creature as having a muscular, human-like torso covered in dark fur, with a head that was unmistakably lupine. Another sighting came from a postman who was making early morning deliveries near Cannock Chase. As he walked along a quiet, fog-shrouded road, he noticed movement in the bushes. Expecting to see a deer or other wildlife, he was stunned when a huge wolf-like creature emerged. The postman watched in horror as the creature stood on its hind legs, stared directly at him, and then vanished into the forest with incredible speed. The 1975 sightings mark a significant chapter in the lore of the Cannock Chase werewolf. These encounters were not isolated incidents, but part of a broader pattern of strange activity in the area. The sightings were meticulously documented by local newspapers and paranormal investigators, who sought to uncover the truth behind these bizarre events. One of the most detailed accounts came from an investigation conducted by a renowned paranormal researcher named Alan Sargent. Sargent, intrigued by the numerous reports, visited Cannock Chase to conduct a thorough investigation. He interviewed witnesses, examined the sites of the sightings, and even camped out in the forest, hoping to catch a glimpse of the creature himself. During his investigation, Sargent collected several compelling testimonies. One of the most striking came from a couple who had been driving through Cannock Chase late one night. According to their account, they were traveling along a remote road when they saw a pair of glowing eyes reflecting their headlights. As they slowed down, the figure of a massive wolf-like creature came into view. The creature stood up on its hind legs, revealing its full height and muscular build. The couple described the creature's eyes as intensely bright, almost hypnotic. Terrified, they sped away, but the creature pursued their car for several minutes before finally disappearing into the trees. Another 1975 testimony came from a farmer who lived on the outskirts of Cannock Chase. He reported hearing unusual howls and growls at night, unlike any animal sounds he had ever heard before. One evening, while checking on his livestock, he encountered a large, shadowy figure near his barn. The creature stood up on its hind legs, and the farmer could see its sharp teeth and glowing eyes. He quickly retreated to his house and called the authorities, but by the time they arrived, the creature was gone. Sargent's investigation also uncovered physical evidence that seemed to support the existence of the werewolf. He found large clawed footprints near the site of the sightings, as well as tufts of dark hair caught on tree branches. Despite his efforts, however, Sargent was unable to capture any definitive photographic or video evidence of the creature. It's funny because these days, hair might be considered a more definitive piece of evidence than video or photographs. But this is 1975 we're talking about. The media frenzy surrounding these 1975 sightings brought Cannock Chase into the national spotlight in England. Newspapers ran sensational headlines about the Cannock Chase werewolf, and the area became a hotspot for thrill seekers and paranormal enthusiasts. Some locals dismissed the reports as mass hysteria, or possibly hoaxes, but for many, the sightings just confirmed the area's supernatural reputation. The legend of the Cannock Chase werewolf has inspired numerous theories and speculations. Some believe the creature is a cryptid, a type of unknown animal that has yet to be scientifically documented. This theory suggests that the werewolf is a rare, elusive species that has managed to avoid detection by blending into its surroundings and only emerging at night. Others propose a more supernatural explanation. Given Cannock Chase's history of paranormal activity, some believe the werewolf is a shapeshifter, or a ghostly entity tied to the area's dark past. The forest's connection to wartime tragedies and ancient legends could provide the perfect backdrop for such a creature to manifest. Skeptics, however, offer a more mundane explanation. They suggest the sightings could be misidentifications of large dogs or wolves, possibly even exotic pets that have escaped into the wild. The power of suggestion and the forest's eerie atmosphere might also play a role, causing witnesses to interpret ordinary animal behavior as something more sinister. Despite numerous investigations and countless hours spent searching for evidence, the true nature of the Cannock Chase werewolf remains a mystery. Whether it is a cryptid, a supernatural entity, or simply a product of overactive imaginations, nobody has been able to prove so far, and the legend continues to this day. But I think before we close the door on this subject, we need to make note of some of the other lore about this very strange and unique place. It isn't only a werewolf that people have had to deal with at Cannock Chase. The area is not only known for its werewolf sightings, but also for a plethora of other strange and eerie phenomena. This area, with its dense forests and historical significance, has been a hotbed for reports of various cryptids, supernatural entities, and unexplained events. From ghostly apparitions to sightings of bizarre creatures, Cannock Chase's mystery extends far beyond the realm of the werewolf. Among the most chilling and unique tales from Cannock Chase is the legend of the Black-Eyed Child. This phenomenon involves sightings of a young girl with completely black eyes, lacking any whites or pupils, often described as both unsettling and terrifying. The story of the Black-Eyed Child in Cannock Chase dates back to the 1980s, making it one of the earliest reported instances of such an entity, predating similar stories that later emerged in the United States. One notable encounter occurred in the early 1980s when a local woman reported seeing a young girl wandering the forest. She initially worried that the young girl was lost and approached her to offer help. As she got closer, though, she was struck by the child's unnaturally dark eyes. Overwhelmed with a sense of dread, the woman retreated and quickly left the area. Subsequent sightings reported similar details. A pale-skinned child with long dark hair and eyes as black as coal, often appearing in remote areas of the forest and vanishing without a trace. Cannock Chase has also been the site of numerous reports of big cats, often described as panthers or leopards. These large, muscular black cats have been seen by multiple witnesses, usually in open clearings or near the edge of the forest. One particularly notable sighting, in 2005, involved a group of people at the Cannock Chase Enterprise Center who saw a large black cat casually strolling through the area. In addition to big cats, there have been occasional reports of strange hybrid creatures, such as the Pigman. Descriptions of this cryptid vary, but it is often depicted as a humanoid figure with the features of a pig, including a snout and tusks. Sightings of the Pigman are very rare, but they add to the eerie reputation of Cannock Chase. The haunted history of Cannock Chase includes numerous ghost sightings. One of the most famous is the ghost of the first Marquess of Anglesey, Henry William Paget, who is often seen riding horseback through the woods. Sometimes he's accompanied by a pack of ghostly hounds. His family's home, Beau de Sert, probably mispronouncing that, stood on the southeastern edge of Cannock Chase, and he did use the land as his hunting ground. The Marquess's ghostly figure has been reported by various witnesses over the years, contributing to the area's haunted reputation. Another commonly reported apparition is the Phantom Cyclist, a ghostly figure seen riding an old-fashioned bicycle along the paths of Cannock Chase. Witnesses describe the cyclist as appearing suddenly and disappearing just as quickly, often in broad daylight. The apparition is thought to be the spirit of a young man who probably met an untimely end in the area. Soldiers from both world wars are also said to haunt Cannock Chase. The area was used as a military training ground and a prisoner of war camp during both wars, and the ghosts of soldiers have been seen. wandering the Cannock Chase War Cemetery. Visitors have reported seeing uniformed figures moving silently among the gravestones, often accompanied by an overwhelming sense of sadness. Castle Ring, an ancient hill fort in Cannock Chase, is another hotspot for supernatural activity. Most likely constructed around 600 BC, this site has been associated with various ghostly encounters, including the apparition of a Roman soldier. The fort's elevated position and historical significance make it a focal point for ghost hunters and paranormal enthusiasts alike. Cannock Chase has also been a significant location for UFO sightings. In 2008, the area was named in a declassified Ministry of Defense report as a hotspot for reported UFO activity in the UK. Witnesses have reported seeing balls of light, cigar-shaped UFOs, and large hovering objects. One of the most famous UFO sightings occurred in 1990, when a ball of light was both seen and heard by multiple witnesses, further adding to the area's mystique. The stories and sightings from Cannock Chase raise the question of whether these are urban legends or real phenomena. The consistent descriptions of the black-eyed child in particular suggest a compelling case for a possible genuine paranormal entity. The sightings have been reported by credible witnesses over several decades, adding weight to the idea that something unusual is happening in Cannock Chase. The black-eyed child phenomenon, now part of a global urban legend situation, might have originated in Cannock Chase, predating similar reports in America, but this lends some credence to the idea that these sightings could be more than just figments of imagination or hoaxes. However, skepticism is also warranted. Many of these stories could be explained by natural phenomena, or psychological factors, or just the power of suggestion. The eerie atmosphere of Cannock Chase, combined with its historical significance and tragic past, creates a perfect setting for the human mind to conjure up apparitions and cryptids. In conclusion, while it's difficult to definitively prove the existence of the black-eyed child or any of the strange entities reported in Cannock Chase, the sheer number of consistent and credible reports suggests that there may be more to these stories than mere legend. Whether these phenomena are real, products of the human psyche, or a mix of some real and some imaginary, you can be certain that Cannock Chase is a creepy location and will likely remain a place of mystery and intrigue for generations to come. You know, I first got turned on to this subject when I read an article in the Star about this guy Lee Brickley's books about Cannock Chase, so I wanted to hook you up with a discounted copy of one of those books. However, they don't seem to be in the affiliate marketing system here at YouTube. I do recommend, if you're into the subject, to try and find his books, Lee Brickley. What I can offer you is a link to this cool vinyl sticker saying that you've investigated Cannock Chase. You can stick it on your stuff and then it looks really cool. It's under $3 American, and if you use the link in our description, then you support this channel because we get a percentage from sales. I also found this cool looking Cannock Chase Cryptid Support Group t-shirt that you can also get from a link in the description if you want to show support for British monsters and cryptids. We also get a commission if you use that link. And now let's move on to a werewolf type entity much closer to home. Well, to my home at least. Werewolf near Warren. Dear Scary Stories NYC. I actually used to listen to your show years ago when I had a security job. You used to have stories read by PQ River in those days. I never thought I'd write you myself because, honestly, nothing weird ever happens to me. Or at least nothing weird happened to me until about 6 or 7 weeks ago, when I had my first ever cryptid experience. I started talking to my friends and neighbors, and I was truly stunned to find 2 people that I know had seen a creature similar to the one I saw, and not all that far from where I saw it either. So I'd like to tell you my experience, and then follow it up by including descriptions my friends have written about what happened to them. All of these seem to either be Dogman or werewolves or skinwalkers or something, as they appeared both human and animal, and seemed as though they might be intelligent creatures, although obviously that can be hard to be certain of in brief encounters. So all of the following took place in Pennsylvania, in the area around Warren, PA. I believe it was April 5th, which was a Friday, but it might have been Thursday, April 4th. I was very rushed that week, and this happened in the middle of a crazy period for me. I didn't have time to think about it when it happened. I had to get to a meeting I was already late for. I think I mentioned it in a text to a friend that night, but I didn't have time to talk at any length about it to anyone till probably Sunday that weekend. Now I wish I had noted the date and time immediately, and if I ever see another cryptid, even if I'm in a rush, I will try to send myself a note on my phone so I can check back later and see the exact time the note was sent. My life is not all nicey-nicey too much of the time though, and I don't really head out on my errands thinking of myself as a scientist who needs to preserve details about my day. But even those of us going through bad, weird times like I am currently can actually contribute to the culture, and so I will try to be more responsible about noting those kinds of things if I ever see another cryptid ever again. Now here is what happened. I was just north of Warren, Pennsylvania, driving south toward it on 5th Avenue, which is a forested road over there. It looks pretty natural when you see it on a map, but there are actually a lot of houses in there. It's settled land, it's not wilderness. As I was driving a bit quickly and in a somewhat stressed mood, I actually shouted out loud in surprise when this large man walked out in front of my car. I'm amazed I didn't hit right into this guy. He was so close and I slammed on the brakes. I didn't have time to swerve away in either direction, and this guy didn't even act like he saw me at first, so he made no effort to get out of the way. Somehow the combination of me screaming and my foot slamming on the brake was just enough to get that car to stop moving forward, and we stopped short so fast that I thought I felt the rear wheels lift off the pavement. Then this guy took notice of me, and he angrily slammed his hand down on my hood, making a bang that I could hear and feel. But this guy's hand was weird. In fact, so was his arm. So was his body. He seemed to be wearing a fur suit. A dark fur suit. Like a gorilla suit or something. I looked up and saw his angry face for the first time. But it wasn't the face of a man. It looked more like a bear. But maybe he was too lean to be a bear. They have round heads. This looked more like a wolf, I guess. Or a German shepherd? Not exactly like either, but it looked like a dog-headed hairy ape man. After banging once on my hood, and bending down to try to look in the front window at me, the beast man then stood all the way up to his full height, which is a kind of thing that gorillas don't do. Bears do it though, and so I went back to wondering if this was some kind of strange bear that just looked like a dog. But the creature took a few steps back, looking my 2007 Toyota Corolla over. And I could see that it walked on legs that were not straight like bear legs or human legs. Its legs were bent like a dog's back legs, you know? Except they supported the full weight of the creature, which at that moment was standing very upright, not hunched over at all. As far as its height, I don't even know what to say or how to judge that. It was far taller than a man, and it could not have been someone in a costume, I don't think. Granted, he seemed to be walking out of someone's yard, but I think he was just passing through. I don't think he lived there. Then again, maybe werewolves are real, and this was a werewolf out for a stroll, I don't know. The huge creature stood in front of me, blocking the road, and I found I was having trouble breathing. It felt almost like a heart attack, but I now think it was a minor panic attack. The monster man looked at my car for a while, then back at me. He started walking forward and around, like he was coming over to the driver's seat window, and he was going to give me a ticket. I checked to see that I was still in drive. Then, as soon as the creature came over enough to the side that I felt I had room, I gunned the engine, and I skidded on past and around him. I heard his hands bang down on my roof as I passed, trying to stop me from getting past him. But even that creature wasn't enough to stop a gas-powered passenger vehicle. I got past him and I watched in my rearview mirror to see him raging behind me, but not making any attempt to pursue. I was and am struggling to hold on to my family home, and I was heading south to deal with business related to that. Once I was certain the Dogman was not running after me, I went back to worrying about my home and my family, and there was no more room in my head for the Dogman on that day. Analyzing what happened now, looking back on it in a somewhat calmer moment, I can note that the creature was walking generally from the northwest toward the southeast, and the direction the creature was walking in generally only gets more and more developed locally. However, he was walking in the direction of the Allegheny National Forest. We are on the outskirts of a whole lot of wilderness. If you pull back on the map a bit, you'll see Warren is in the middle of a whole lot of green. But maps can be a bit deceptive. The area the Dogman was walking in is much more lived in than where he might have been walking to. I suspect he had a very specific destination in mind, which he had just visited for whatever reason. Then he was likely returning to the wilder area that he was more likely to live in toward the National Forest. This is assuming, of course, that he was and is an ordinary creature like you and me, and not some kind of extra-dimensional space alien or whatever kind of thing, which is what a friend of mine thinks. But maybe he has a reason to think that. At least if he's not kidding about this sighting he had. This guy, let's call him Jeff. Now he is a joker, you know. He's the life of the party, and so I'm a little suspicious about his story, even though he does not crack a smile when telling his tale. I think if he just said he saw a Dogman cross a road like I saw, it would have been easier to believe. But he's written his story up in a short version for me, and so I'll give it to you in his own words. After that, I have a female friend who saw one on her property, and I'll give you her version of those events too. But first, check out this truly bizarro Dogman story from my crazy friend Jeff. Jeff's story in his own words. Just south of Warren, Pennsylvania, is Chapman State Park, where I once went camping with my late Uncle Jay. I guess I was 17 at the time, because I remember I had just broken up with my first serious girlfriend, and that was sort of why Uncle Jay brought me out to the woods, to take my mind off stuff like that. Even though camping can be relaxing if you do it right and if you get lucky, you also have to focus on the here and now a lot, and that's a good thing to do when getting over a breakup. So we had just finished setting up camp and eating when things got weird. We were enjoying the sunset, with the sky turning all sorts of colors, but I don't even know how to explain it. The colors got to be kind of wrong. Like, not sunset colors, but not sunset colors either. They were changing too quickly for one thing, and there were greens and pale blues in there, kind of like an aurora borealis, but all coming from the west where the sun had set. So it got dark, and then we heard a crunch, 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 a rhythmic marching sound coming from the woods. It sounded like a big man marching, and he did not care how much noise he was making. This was not someone sneaking up on us, so we got up from the campfire we were sitting behind and we walked around it, squinting into the darkness to try to adjust our eyes to the dark and see who that was approaching. I saw a large shape moving in the dark, and when I saw two bright points of light turn and look at me, I realized those were eyes, and they were on top of the hugest man I had ever seen. I thought it was Bigfoot, and I ran back to camp immediately. I was gonna jump in the tent, but Uncle Jay beat me in there and came out with his weapon. The creature had followed us right back into camp, and I was screaming like a pathetic infant. I thought this was the end of us. This monster thing got right up near our campfire, and we could see it in every detail. It looked filthy, like it had been living in those woods for 700 years, and never walked through a lake to clean off. It had to be 9 feet tall, and it looked angrier than I've ever seen any animal look. The head was like a wolf head, but also not like a wolf head, and the teeth were so long that they almost couldn't fit in this thing's mouth. It had shoulders and it had arms, and they were massive. Uncle Jay screamed, "Back away, or I swear I'll shoot," like he was a cop on a TV show. The creature raised its arms over its head, which I thought meant he was giving up. Uncle Jay took it as a threat, though. It didn't matter what he did, though, because as soon as that pop went off, The wolf-headed hairy monster man just wasn't there anymore. And I mean, he just wasn't there. Do you know how in expensive fancy movies, when a magical creature or a future science spaceship, when they go invisible or they cloak themselves, there's an effect, a transition effect, so you can see them turning from one state to another. That's how you know they had a budget. They make it look more realistic. But then sometimes you see really cheap old movies and TV shows where they just cut the camera and blink things in and out. That's the cheap way to do it when you know they're on a tight schedule and probably had a limited special effects budget. Well, what we saw was the latter. We saw the cheap version. That Dogman or Werewolf was there, and then when my uncle fired, he wasn't there anymore. I don't know if he became invisible or if he teleported or if he just ceased to exist, but he was there 1 second, and then he wasn't there the next. Needless to say, we didn't know what to do. It was too dark for us to pack up and get out of there, as we were not expert hikers. That's not to say we hiked a dangerous trail in, but it might have been dangerous for us in the dark. Basically, we were as scared of the idea of hiking back in the dark as we were of staying put. So we stayed put, and we beat it out of there at the first light of dawn. Nothing else crazy happened that night, but Uncle Jay and I thought we had seen a Dogman, and we felt like it was a Dogman from outer space. Go ahead and laugh, but we felt like this thing landed on Earth, and then came over to look at us. I mean, maybe that wasn't a spaceship landing, maybe it was a portal opening, but it's sort of the same thing to us, isn't it? Maybe the lights we saw were a ship, or maybe the lights we saw were a portal. What's the difference? This thing seemed to have come from someplace else, to where we were. Uncle Jay and I used to talk about this stuff a lot after that sighting, as you can imagine. The idea that aliens or whatever they are come here to study us scientifically, that doesn't hold much water when the aliens look like big hairy animal monsters, and they go around scaring people. Uncle Jay had a theory that we are a world that the other worlds dump their monsters and bad guys into, so that they don't have to deal with them. Like maybe their choice is jail on their own world, or being dropped off in the woods to try to survive here. I think he got the idea from that Star Trek movie where Kirk and McCoy get sentenced to banishment on that snowy planet. When he was about to pass on from this world, Uncle Jay and I discussed his theory for the last time. I remember he said, "Who knows? Maybe when I took that pot shot, I was actually shooting at Captain Kirk." And we both had a nice big belly laugh about it. End of Jeff's narrative. I had mentioned I had a friend with another less bizarre encounter. I'd like to finish this email up with that one. Here, my friend, who is a lady, wishes to remain anonymous. Here is her account in her own words. I was staying over with my friend Lucy, who lives out in the woods near North Warren, PA. It was late, probably around midnight, when I heard this tapping on the bedroom window. At first I thought it might be a tree branch or something, but it was too rhythmic, like someone was knocking. I opened my eyes and I saw this creature staring in at me. It had the body of a man, or I guess an ape man, since it was either wearing a fur suit, or else it was just furry all over. But it didn't have a man's head, or even a Bigfoot head. He was a man thing with the head of a German shepherd, kind of, if a German shepherd were covered in thick black fur. Its eyes glowed, reflecting the little bit of moonlight that was out. I froze for a second, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. Then panic set in and I screamed. Lucy burst into the room almost immediately. As soon as she did, the creature ran off into the woods. It moved fast and I quickly lost sight of it from my vantage point. Lucy asked me what happened and I tried to explain, but it sounded crazy even to me. She tried to calm me down, saying it was probably a trick of the light or my imagination. After a bit, she went back to her own room and I tried to settle down. But just as I was about to drift off, there was that tapping again. I looked, and there it was, the same creature, staring in at me with those eerie eyes. I screamed again, and Lucy came running back in. This time the creature just seemed to vanish. We didn't see it hear or leave. It was just gone. Maybe it ducked under the window and was still right there, just on the other side of the wall from us. Well, that was too much. I was too scared to stay in that room alone, so I slept in Lucy's room for the rest of the night. We never saw the creature again after that. It was the most terrifying experience of my life. Thinking back on it, the creature's appearance was something straight out of a nightmare. Its body was muscular, covered in thick black fur that seemed almost too dense for a German shepherd. The head, while canine, had an unsettling intelligence in its glowing eyes. They weren't just reflecting light. They seemed to have their own inner luminescence, adding to its freaky appearance. The way it moved was almost fluid, yet there was a predatory grace to it, like it was always on the hunt. The image of its piercing eyes and formidable presence is something that I will never forget. So I don't know if there's a portal in the woods near Warren, PA, or maybe it was just a temporary period of weirdness. Maybe it's over already. I was talking with a friend who's into this stuff, and he says sometimes these things just happen for a few years in one place, and then the window gets closed and things get back to normal. Maybe this was like that, or maybe they call Pennsylvania weird for a good reason. If you've had something weird happen near Warren, please leave a comment and let us know about it. Coming up next, Dogman in New York State, right after this.
Find that link in the description, honey.
My cryptid experiences in Saugerties, New York, from 2003 to 2008. Dear Scary Stories NYC, I've decided to share my experiences during the 5 years I lived in Saugerties, New York. I'm not looking for any publicity or attention, just trying to write down what I encountered. It's a relief to put it into words. First, the Dogman sightings. During my time in Saugerties, the most terrifying encounters involved a creature I came to call the Dogman. I later found out this is the generally accepted term for this creature. This beast, with its massive stature and unsettling presence, was a constant source of fear and confusion. Standing 9 feet tall sometimes, with a reddish-brown coat and a canine-like face, the Dogman appeared multiple times in my life, both in the woods and right outside my home. These sightings were the primary reason I eventually decided to leave the area. Here are the 12 most significant sightings and incidents that I experienced from 2003 to 2008, the first 5 of which are Dogman experiences, but it goes on from there and gets even weirder. 1. First encounter in the woods, March 2003. My first sighting of the Dogman happened one early spring evening. I was walking in the woods near my home, enjoying the thaw after a harsh winter. Suddenly I felt a chill run through me. I looked up, and I saw a large, reddish-brown creature standing about 50 feet away. It had a dog-like face, but its body was more like an incredibly muscular man covered in a fur rug. It had to have stood at least 9 feet tall. We locked eyes for what felt like an eternity before it turned and vanished into the trees. I rushed back home trying to rationalize what I had seen, but nothing made sense. Number 2, June 2003. Just a few months later, and I was home alone, watching television. I felt a presence and looked toward the window. There it was again. The same Dogman, or one that looked just like it. Its eyes glowed with an unnatural light as it stared at me. I was frozen in fear. After a few minutes, it slowly backed away into the darkness. This sort of became a recurring event over the next few years. In September 2004, I was in the kitchen making a late-night snack. I glanced up and saw the creature again, peering in through the kitchen window. It was closer than before, and I could see the individual hairs on his face. It was terrifying. I dropped the plate I was holding and the noise startled it. It disappeared into the night. About a year and a half later, January 2006, on a cold winter night, I was reading in the living room. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up, and I looked toward the window. There it was, its breath fogging up the glass. It watched me for a long time before I gathered up the courage to move. I slowly reached for my phone, but when I looked back, it was gone. August 2008. Final Dogman encounter and my decision to move. By this time, I was used to the occasional sighting, but this one was different. I woke up in the middle of the night to find the Dogman staring into my bedroom. The fear was overwhelming. Something about this sighting was different. I knew I couldn't live like this anymore. I decided then and there I was moving, and within a month I was gone. Other strange phenomena. In addition to the Dogman sightings, I experienced a variety of other unsettling events that defied explanation. From the mysterious figures and disembodied voices, to objects moving on their own and bizarre animal encounters, these phenomena made my life in Saugerties a constant source of unease. Each incident added to the mounting sense of dread that eventually drove me to leave. Below I've detailed these occurrences as accurately as I can remember. July 2003. One summer evening I was tending to my garden when I saw a small figure out of the corner of my eye. It was about 2 feet tall, with a long white beard and a pointed hat. It looked like a stereotypical garden gnome. It stood there motionless watching me. I blinked and it was gone. I checked the area but found nothing. The image of that gnome stayed with me, as it was so out of place in reality. October 2003. The Screaming Woman. I was hiking a trail I knew well and I heard a woman screaming for help. The sound echoed through the woods, but I couldn't pinpoint the direction. I searched for nearly an hour, calling out, but found no one. I would think I was getting close, and then I'd hear the screaming from a completely different direction. There was no sign of anyone the entire time. I finally left, deeply unsettled by this experience. May 2004, the talking furry creature. While walking near my house, I came across a small furry animal. It resembled a raccoon, but it was standing on its hind legs. To my shock, it started speaking to me, but only one word at a time. "Help," it said, then paused. "Danger," it continued. The words didn't make sense together, and after a minute it scampered off. I never saw it again, but that encounter was very bizarre. December 2005. Light orbs in the house. During a particularly cold winter night, I saw orbs of light floating through my house. They were about the size of baseballs, glowing a soft blue. They moved slowly, entering through one wall and exiting through another. I tried to touch one, but my hand passed right through it. They were silent, but their presence was creepy. This happened several times over the winter of 2005 and 2006, but I never found an explanation. February 2006, disembodied voices. I began hearing voices in my home. They were faint at first, growing louder over time. The voices were cruel, insulting me in trivial and mean ways. Loser, failure, worthless. Sometimes they wouldn't say anything and they'd just laugh at me. I would search for the source, but I'd find nothing. This continued sporadically for about 6 months, but by 2007 I noticed it had just stopped happening. April 2007, poltergeist phenomena. Objects in my house began moving on their own. Books flew off shelves, doors slammed shut, and lights flickered without any apparent cause. One night my kitchen table lifted a few inches off the floor and then dropped back down real loudly. These events were sporadic, but they were pretty scary, making me feel like my home was no longer safe. And the final strange occurrence I want to list here involved acorns, believe it or not. This was July 2008. I would be sitting in my living room, and suddenly an acorn would appear about a foot under the ceiling and drop to the floor. They were always hot to the touch. This happened several times a week for about 2 months, and then I got a bunch of them all in one day. I collected them in a jar, but they eventually stopped appearing. Before I moved, I tossed the acorns from the jar around in the woods in the back. At the time I did it because I assumed that's where they had come from. We do have oak trees back there. But maybe they were from another part of the world entirely, and I just helped this entity or intelligence or glitch in the matrix or whatever it is spread the acorn seed literally into a new area. I don't know if what I did was a good idea or not, but it's not like we didn't already have oak trees in America, so I don't suppose it's any biggie. When I hear people talking about one butterfly flapping its wings and a monsoon occurring later in time somewhere else, I feel guilty for dispersing these acorns how I did. It makes me realize that we are all truly instruments of fate. These experiences were the most significant and disturbing events I encountered during that time I spent in Saugerties. Each one left a lasting impression on me, contributing to my decision to leave. I have since moved far away, not going to tell you where, and I'm hoping to find peace and normalcy somewhere in America. Next story. Dogman and Sasquatch sightings and harassment in rural Wisconsin. Dear Scary Stories NYC, I hope this email finds you well. I wanted to share with you some strange and unnerving experiences that my wife and I have had over the past 7 years here in rural Wisconsin. We've both been longtime fans of your show, and we believe that our encounters might be of interest to you and your audience. It all began for us one late summer evening in 2017. Our property is surrounded by dense woods, and on this particular night, I decided to take a stroll around the edge of our backyard, which borders the forest. The sun had just set, and there was enough light left to see without a flashlight. As I approached the tree line, I noticed a figure standing just beyond the first few trees. At first I thought it was a deer, but as my eyes adjusted, I realized that it was something entirely different. Standing on two legs, it was around 7 feet tall, covered in dark fur, with a head that resembled that of a wolf. Its eyes glowed a menacing yellow in the dim light. We locked eyes for what felt like an eternity. It was probably only a few seconds. Then it turned and disappeared into the woods, with a fluid, almost effortless motion. I was frozen in place, my heart pounding in my chest. I rushed back into the house and told my wife what I'd seen. We were both pretty shaken up, but tried to convince ourselves that it was just some kind of optical illusion, or maybe an animal we had just never seen before. Following that sighting, our nights were never the same. Almost every night we would hear knocking and banging on the outside walls of our house. The sounds were loud and deliberate, as if someone or something was trying to get our attention or scare us. At first we thought it might be teenagers playing pranks, but the persistence and intensity of the noises made us rethink that theory. It seemed to happen mostly after dark and would continue sporadically through the night. We never saw what caused the noises, but we always had a sense of being watched. We started to think that perhaps the Dogman was responsible. The regularity and the fact that it only happened at night seemed to fit with the creature I had seen. We never found any tracks or signs during the day, but the feeling of unease was always there. In 2020, during the height of the pandemic, something happened that changed our perspective. My wife was taking out the garbage one night when she saw something that left her speechless. As she approached the garbage bins near the edge of the woods, she noticed movement out of the corner of her eye. Turning to look, she saw a large, hairy figure running toward the house. It was not a Dogman, though. It was a Sasquatch, easily 8 feet tall or taller, with long, swinging arms and a massive, muscular build. She watched as it ran up to our house, slapped the side of it with an open hand, and then quickly retreated into the woods. She rushed back inside, terrified but oddly relieved. For the first time, we had a possible explanation for the nocturnal disturbances, and it wasn't the Dogman. We began to think that maybe we had a habituated Sasquatch instead. Our relief was short-lived. Literally the next night, as we were driving to a nearby big box retailer to pick up some supplies, we encountered something that shattered our newfound peace. We were less than a mile from our home, driving through our neighborhood, when we saw a dark figure standing in the middle of the road. As we got closer, we realized it was the Dogman. Its eyes reflected the headlights of our car, and as we approached, it started running toward us. I floored the gas pedal and we sped past it, but it gave chase, running alongside the car for what felt like an eternity. We got to see its muscular form and the way its claws dug into the asphalt as it ran. Eventually, we outpaced it and made it to the store, but the experience left us deeply shaken. We now had two mysterious creatures in our area, and both seemed intent on making their presence known. In the years 2023 and 2024, my wife has had 3 additional encounters with the Dogman. These sightings have all been unsettling and seem to indicate an increase in activity. One afternoon in March, my wife went out to our woodshed to gather some firewood. As she approached the shed, she noticed the strange silence had fallen over the area. The usual sounds of birds and insects were absent. She felt a prickle of fear, but continued toward the shed. As she reached the door, she caught sight of a movement to her left. There, partially obscured by the trees, was the Dogman. It was standing perfectly still, watching her with those unnerving yellow eyes. She backed away slowly, never taking her eyes off it, and hurried back to the house. The Dogman fortunately did not follow, but the encounter left her pretty upset. Summer 2023 evening walk. In July, we were walking along a trail that runs behind our property. It was early evening and the sun was setting, casting long shadows across the path. As we walked, we heard a rustling in the bushes to our right. We stopped and listened, thinking it might be a deer. Suddenly, the Dogman emerged from the undergrowth, walking on 2 legs, and crossed the path about 20 yards ahead of us. It either didn't notice us or it didn't care. It disappeared into the woods on the other side of the path, leaving us paralyzed. We turned and walked quickly back to the house, constantly looking over our shoulders. Spring 2024 backyard sighting. Just a couple months ago in April 2024, my wife had another sighting, this time in our own backyard. She was sitting on the porch in late afternoon, enjoying a paperback book, when she felt a sudden chill. Looking up, she saw the Dogman standing at the edge of the yard near the tree line. It was watching her intently, its body half hidden by the trees. She stood up slowly, and then the Dogman turned and walked back into the woods. This sighting was particularly upsetting because it happened so close to our home, and it happened in the middle of the day. Throughout these years, we were trying to document our experiences as best as we can, but the fear and the unpredictability of these encounters kind of makes it difficult. We have considered moving, but this is our home, and the thought of leaving it because of some animals, that's just heartbreaking. We hope that by sharing our story with you, others who might be experiencing similar events will feel less alone. We also hope that someone out there might have answers or suggestions for how we can live alongside these mysterious beings a little more peacefully. Thank you for taking the time to read our story. Best regards, Anonymous. Okay, here's the last story for this episode. I'm going to read you the first email we got, and then I wrote her back, and she sent me some more information. I'll include that at the end. The title is, I Need Advice. I suspect my boyfriend might be a werewolf. Dear Scary Stories NYC, I'm writing to you because I desperately need advice about a situation that's been troubling me for some time now. I know this might sound absurd, but I have reasons to believe that my boyfriend, who I will call Jake for the sake of anonymity, might be a werewolf. This isn't a conclusion I've come to lightly, but I'm still only about 50 to 60% sure. However, the signs are too disturbing to ignore, and I'm hoping you, or your viewers, can provide some guidance on what I should do. Jake and I have been together for about 2 years. He's a lawyer in New York City, a highly intelligent and charming man, but there have always been some unsettling things about him that I can't shake off. Here are the reasons why I suspect he might be a werewolf. Unexplainable absences. Jake often disappears during the full moon. First, I didn't think too much about it. He would say he had to work late or had a business trip, but after a while I started to notice this pattern. Every full moon, he's either unreachable or has a convenient excuse for why he can't be with me. When I confronted him about it, he became defensive and irritable. Number 2. Strange injuries. Jake frequently has scratches and bruises that he can't explain. When I ask him about these injuries, he always gives vague responses like he must have bumped into something or doesn't remember how he got them. Once I noticed deep claw marks on his back that looked too severe to be from a simple accident. He got angry at me and brushed it off as a mishap at the gym. Heightened senses. I've always been able to smell things better than any boyfriend I ever had, but Jake's sense of smell and hearing are unusually sharp. He can identify scents from a distance and hear conversations that are too far away for me to hear. This heightened awareness has always seemed a bit off to me. He once smelled my perfume from across the room and sent me a text message about it. Number 4. Odd eating habits. Jake has peculiar eating habits. He craves rare meat, and he often prefers his steaks almost raw. While I know some people enjoy their meat rare, his preference borders on the extreme. He doesn't eat any vegetables at all, at least not when I'm around. He also has a peculiar way of eating, almost animal, tearing into the meat with a ferocity that really creeps me out. Number 5. Behavioral changes. Around the time of the full moon, Jake's behavior does become erratic. He's more aggressive, he's more irritable. His temper flares over minor issues. He also seems to have more energy during these periods, pacing around the apartment, unable to sit still. His mood swings are drastic and unpredictable. Number 6. Unexplained howling. On a few occasions I've heard howling sounds coming from his apartment. The first time it happened I thought it might be a neighbor's dog, but the sound was too deep and resonant. When I knocked on his door and mentioned it to Jake, he got angry at me and dismissed it as nothing. I've noticed subtle physical changes in Jake. His hair seems to grow faster and thicker around the full moon, and his eyes sometimes appear to have a golden hue in certain lights. He also has a unibrow, which, while not conclusive evidence, adds to my growing list of concerns. I know it sounds superficial, but it's already one of those small details that stand out when you're suspicious to start with. I'm supposed to go away with Jake to his cabin in the woods next weekend. The thought of being isolated with him in such a remote location fills me with dread. I've tried to think of excuses to avoid the trip, but he's so excited about it that I'm afraid of how he'll react if I cancel. The trip takes place during the full moon, though. His temper is something I've become increasingly wary of. When he's angry, it's like a different person takes over. His eyes darken, and his voice even sounds different. I don't want to live in fear, and I certainly don't want to bring children into this world under these circumstances. Not to mention, I can't shake off the thought of having children with a unibrow. I know that sounds shallow. In fact, I know it is shallow, but it's one of those irrational fears that add to my overall anxiety. It's not just about the physical appearance either. Let's be honest. It's about the implications of his potential true nature, and what he might pass on to our children if we had any. I'm at a crossroads. I feel like I want to break up with Jake, but I also feel I should be absolutely sure about what he is before making such a drastic decision. If I'm wrong, I'll have ended a relationship with a good man that I know I love over unfounded fears. But if I'm right, staying with him could be dangerous and wrong. So here's where I need your help or the help of your viewers. How can I get 100% proof that Jake is a werewolf? Are there specific signs or tests I can look to for confirmation? And if he is a werewolf, what should I do? I am scared to confront him directly, but I don't want to live in fear any longer. I need to find a way to protect myself and ensure my safety without provoking his wrath. Thank you for taking the time to read my story. I appreciate any advice or any help that any of you can offer me. So I wrote her asking some questions, and she wrote back to me with an email providing additional context. 1. Early relationship signs. When Jake and I first started dating, everything seemed perfect. He was attentive, caring. We shared many interests. It wasn't until about 6 months into our relationship that I started noticing the odd behaviors. Initially, I attributed them to stress from his demanding job, but as the incidents became more frequent, I couldn't ignore them any longer. 2. Investigating his past. I've done some discreet digging into Jake's past. From what I can gather, his family has a history of unusual behavior. I found out that his great-grandfather was rumored to be involved in some strange activities in his hometown. Some old newspaper clippings mentioned mysterious animal attacks in the area, and the descriptions of the creatures involved were eerily similar to werewolves. Jake rarely talks about his family, and whenever I bring up the subject, he changes it. 3. Friends' observations. A few of my friends have also noticed Jake's odd behavior. One friend who's particularly intuitive mentioned that she felt uneasy around him, especially during certain times of the month. She said there was something primal about his energy that makes her skin crawl. Another friend joked about Jake's werewolf-like appearance, not knowing the extent of my concerns. 4. Protective measures. I have started taking some precautionary measures just in case. I keep a silver necklace hidden in my jewelry box, and a small bottle of wolfsbane tincture in my purse. I don't know if these items will actually protect me or if those are just legends, but having them gives me a small sense of control over an otherwise terrifying situation. You know, the upcoming trip to the cabin is weighing heavily on my mind. Jake's been planning it for weeks, and he's unusually insistent that we go during the full moon. He talks about how isolated and peaceful it is, but all I can think about is how far away from help we'll be if something goes wrong. I've considered asking a friend to call me with an emergency right before we're supposed to leave, but I'm worried Jake will see through that ruse. Emotionally, I'm torn. I love Jake and have shared some wonderful moments with him. The idea that he could be something other than human breaks my heart. I've tried to rationalize his behavior and find alternative explanations, but the evidence keeps pointing back to the same unsettling conclusion. I feel like I'm living in a nightmare, where I can't distinguish reality from fear-induced paranoia. I've considered talking to a professional about my fears, but I'm worried they'll just think I'm crazy. How do you tell someone that you think your boyfriend might be a werewolf without sounding delusional? I've even thought about reaching out to a paranormal expert, but I don't know where to start or who to trust. I'm running out of time before the cabin trip, and my anxiety is reaching a breaking point. Every time I see Jake, I scrutinize his every move, looking for more signs, more proof. But the more I look, the more confused I make myself. Should I take the risk and confront him, hoping for a rational explanation? Or should I quietly make plans to leave and ensure my safety first? My gut tells me to run, but my heart isn't ready to give up just yet. I look forward to hearing any thoughts or advice any of you have on this matter. Thank you for being a source of support for those of us dealing with the inexplicable. If thanking an EP is what you're craving, then today you should thank Talon the Raven. Please thank Talon the Raven, today's executive producer, for making this episode possible. Talon has been a member of our PayPal Subscribers Club for years, and we greatly appreciate her monthly donations. To hear what she gets in return for her membership, please listen to our international TV spokesmongrel Henry Lee Dogman. Thank you. Thanks, Biggie. And thanks to all of you for watching this far. If you liked it, please click like. If you'd like to see more of our work, please subscribe. And also click that bell icon if you'd like to be notified when we put out a new episode. To become an executive producer, you can donate to us through the thanks button under each of our videos or through our paypal.me/PeterBernard209 page. To receive cool perks like secret uncensored Dogman episodes far too wild to ever run on this channel, you can become a YouTube channel member by clicking the join button or join our PayPal subscribers club at peterbernard.com. Joining either at the $3 a month level or above gets you access to our over 25 hours of secret uncensored Dogman stories available nowhere else. Do you have a scary story about Dogman or some other kind of high strangeness that happened to you? Let us know by emailing us at scarystoriesnyc@gmail.com or by leaving us a voicemail message at 804-LA-SCARY. You may need to call back on that when it cuts off after I think 3 minutes. And if you don't want to do any of that stuff, thank you for simply watching to the end. Good night, and have a scary tomorrow.
Come back for more scary stories.